Lucy Rodriguez was 32 and always walked with her shoulders squared, like someone who had learned to be brave without making a sound. She lived in the working-class neighborhood of Mott Haven in the Bronx, in a small rented room she shared with a younger cousin. Every day before the sun was fully up, she'd get on the crowded city bus that took her to the Upper East Side, where mansions rose behind high walls and security cameras. There, in the Sterling house, she cleaned marble floors, tidied enormous bedrooms and served meals on china that cost more than her 3-month salary. Lucy had a sharp sense of justice, a rare ability to notice every detail that was out of place. She saw what others preferred to ignore. She kept a simple faith in the pocket of her navy blue uniform in the form of a worn-out rosary that had belonged to her grandmother. The smooth beads would slide between her calloused fingers whenever she needed the strength to endure another day of silent humiliations, the kind that don't bruise the body, but leave deep marks on the soul. In the quietest room of that immense house, far from the noise of the kitchen and the artificial laughter of the living room, Mr. Ernest Sterling was slowly fading away on a king-size bed that seemed even larger because of the old man's shrunken body. He was 80 years old, with skin as thin as tissue paper and trembling hands stained with age spots. He was the father of Michael Sterling, the owner of the mansion, a successful entrepreneur who appeared in magazines and on television talking about social responsibility and family values. From her first day of work 6 months ago, Mr. Ernest had been the only voice in that house that treated Lucy with genuine respect. While the others barely looked at her, as if the uniform made her invisible, the old man always said, "Please," before asking for something, thanked her with a gentle smile, and asked about her family. His hands, shaking from Parkinson's, reminded Lucy of the grandfather she hadn't been able to protect years ago, when he was put in a cheap nursing home where he was mistreated until he died. That old guilt burned in her chest like a smouldering ember. She couldn't bear the thought of seeing another old man suffer while no one was willing to listen. Lucy wanted 2 things urgently: to alleviate Mr. Ernest's growing suffering and to convince Michael that he needed to seek another medical opinion. But she kept hitting practical walls that were hard to overcome. All decisions about the old man went through his son and Dr. Bennett, the private physician who visited the house twice a week. Both men barely glanced at her. When she tried to speak, she received condescending smiles or was simply ignored, as if a housekeeper couldn't possibly have anything relevant to say about someone's health. There was also the internal wall, the one she carried inside her own chest. The fear of losing her job was real and constant. She needed that salary to help her mother, who lived alone in a small town in South Texas, to pay the rent on the small room in Mott Haven, to survive in a city that showed no mercy to the poor. She also feared being accused of exaggerating, of creating problems where there were none. It had happened before. At a previous job, she had reported the abuse of an elderly, bedridden woman. They called her dramatic, a liar, a meddler. She was fired within 24 hours, with no letter of recommendation, with nothing but the certainty that no one would believe the word of a day worker over that of a wealthy family. But this time, there was something different in the air, a silent urgency that Lucy couldn't ignore no matter how hard she tried. Every night she would enter Mr. Ernest's room with soft steps so as not to startle him. She would change the crystal water pitcher on the nightstand, check if the old man was covered with the thin sheet he preferred, and organize the colorful pill organizer that Mrs. Martin, the head housekeeper, counted and separated religiously. Lucy also did something no one knew about. She wrote everything down in a cheap, blue hardcover notebook she kept at the bottom of her worn-out purse. The time Mr. Ernest woke up, if he had eaten well, if he complained of pain, if he seemed confused or lucid, if his skin was paler than usual. They were simple notes, written in a round, careful hand. Lucy had barely finished high school, but she knew how to observe and record what she saw. She also kept a voice recorder app on her old basic phone with its cracked screen, an app she had only used to send messages to her mother. She didn't know yet why she was saving these things, but an inner voice told her they might be important one day. On her way back from the mansion, Lucy always stopped for a minute at the small parish chapel in Mott Haven. She would light a thin candle when she had a few coins to spare, or just stand there, breathing in the smell of wax and incense, feeling the different kind of silence in that sacred place. It was the only moment of the day when no one expected anything from her. That Thursday afternoon, while changing Mr. Ernest's water, Lucy noticed something strange. She brought the crystal glass closer to her nose and smelled a faint, almost imperceptible metallic scent that shouldn't have been there. Pure water didn't smell like that. She looked at the sleeping old man, at his chest rising and falling with difficulty, at his dry, chapped lips. A silent urgency shot through her entire body, making her heart beat faster. She went down to the kitchen with the glass in, her hand trying to act natural. Rosa, the cook, a widow in her 50s, was chopping onions for dinner. Lucy pretended to wash the glass with extra care, as if it were just a matter of hygiene. "This glass was a little weird," she muttered, more to herself than to Rosa. The cook looked up, her eyes puffy from the onions. "Weird how?" "I don't know. A different smell." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron and took the clean glass, smelling it too. She frowned, handed it back without a word, but there was a new worry in her eyes. The two women understood each other without needing many words. They both knew what it was like to work in that house of perfect appearances and hidden secrets. That night, on the crowded bus back to the Bronx, Lucy got off 2 stops early. She walked to the chapel, lit only by flickering candles. There was no one there but a very old woman praying the rosary in a low voice. Lucy knelt on the hard wooden pew, clutched the rosary in her hands, and closed her eyes. The smell of wilted flowers mixed with that of melted wax. Outside, cars honked, people shouted, the city kept up its frantic pace. Inside, there was only silence and that growing urgency in her chest. "Give me courage, Lord," she whispered so quietly she wasn't even sure she had said it out loud. "Show me the way. Don't let me stand by and do nothing again." When she opened her eyes, the candles seemed to shine more brightly. Lucy stood up, put the rosary in the pocket of her thin coat, and walked out into the cold city night. She didn't have answers yet, but she had something many people lose. Over a lifetime, the ability to see what was wrong and the willingness to do something about it, no matter the cost. The next day, she would return to that mansion on the Upper East Side. She would go back to cleaning the same marble floors, serving the same meals and hearing the same superficial conversations. But now she was alert, with all her senses awakened, and that made all the difference. The following days at the Sterling mansion unfolded with the same old routine, but Lucy moved through the house with her senses on high alert. As she polished the marble floor of the main entrance, she heard the echo of laughter from the wide veranda, where Michael entertained important partners and clients. He recorded videos for social media, talking about business success, a united family, and Christian values, always with that perfect smile of someone who has never known real hardship. Downstairs in the back room of the house, his father was breathing with increasing difficulty, and the noise of the world didn't reach that lonely bed. Lucy began to notice patterns that had previously gone unnoticed. On the days when she herself filled Mr. Ernest's glass with filtered water directly from the kitchen tap, using the plain glass pitcher, the old man would open his eyes with more clarity. He would ask about the garden he saw through the window, comment on the weather, and even tell weak jokes about the terrible food they serve in hospitals. His voice came out hoarse but present, and his brown eyes regained a sparkle Lucy hadn't seen in weeks. However, on the shifts when the nurse, Claudia, was responsible for changing the water, Mr. Ernest would be nearly unconscious for hours. His tongue seemed drier, stuck to the roof of his mouth, and a slightly greyish tone would creep over his thin lips. He would moan softly, as if having nightmares, but wouldn't wake up even when Lucy called his name gently. Claudia was a woman in her 40s, thin, always impeccable in her white nurse's uniform. She wore her hair in a tight bun and spoke little to the other staff. She arrived promptly at 3 p.m. and left at 11 p.m., carrying out her shift with mechanical efficiency. She wasn't a bad person, Lucy sensed. She just seemed too tired to ask questions. One Tuesday morning, Lucy pretended. Her cleaning rag had fallen near the door of the guest bathroom, that small powder room between Mr. Ernest's room and the main hallway. She bent down slowly to pick it up, and in that casual movement managed to see through the slightly ajar door. Claudia was in there alone, holding the crystal pitcher. She didn't fill it at the sink in that bathroom. Lucy saw her take a small, unlabeled vial from her uniform pocket and pour a few drops into the water. The liquid inside the vial was clear, almost like water, but it had a different viscosity. Lucy's heart pounded. She grabbed the rag and left quickly, pretending she hadn't seen anything. But she had seen. And now she had to decide what to do with that information. The old fear returned with full force. Years ago, at another job, she had reported the abuse of an elderly, bedridden woman. The family accused her of being a liar, of making up stories to get attention. They said she was dramatic, unstable, that she was trying to get money from a baseless lawsuit. Lucy lost her job and couldn't find another for months because no one wanted to hire a problematic employee. That scar had never fully healed. To this day, she sometimes doubted her own perceptions. What if she was seeing things that weren't there? What if that vial just contained vitamins or supplements authorized by the doctor? But her inner voice, the same one that led her to the chapel every night, said no, that something was deeply wrong. In the kitchen, Rosa noticed Lucy's restlessness. The cook was a generous-hearted woman, a widow for 10 years, who was supporting a nephew who was mixed up in drugs. The young man worked as a delivery driver for a pharmaceutical lab that did business with Dr. Bennett's private clinic. Rosa never talked much about it, but Lucy knew the situation worried her constantly. "You've got a heavy weight on your shoulders, kid," Rosa said one afternoon, pouring hot coffee into a chipped mug. "If something's wrong, it'll come out eventually. What if no one believes me?" Lucy held the warm mug between her hands, feeling the steam rise to her face. "Then you find someone who will. But don't stay quiet. Silence is also a choice, and sometimes it's the wrong one." Those simple words echoed in Lucy's head for the next few days. Gabriel, the night security guard, also noticed something was different. He was a serious, quiet man of about 55 who watched the front gate and monitored the mansion's security cameras. He had a 12-year-old daughter with severe asthma, and the health insurance that came with this job paid for her treatment. He couldn't afford to lose this position, but he had eyes, and he saw Lucy growing more tense, looking over her shoulder before entering Mr. Ernest's room, avoiding Claudia in the hallways. One night, as Lucy was leaving the mansion well after 11, Gabriel called her over to the guard booth. "Be careful," he said simply, looking at her intently. "There are a lot of cameras here, but not everything gets recorded." "What do you mean?" "There are blind spots. The guest bathroom, for example. And some recordings disappear when someone upstairs asks for them to." Lucy understood. Gabriel was telling her, without saying it outright, that he knew something was going on, and that she needed proof that couldn't be erased with a mouse click. In Michael's office during the weekly cleaning Lucy did on Fridays, she managed to get a quick look at a folder of documents on the mahogany desk. It was partially open, showing invoices from a company called Aqua Pure Medical Specialized Solutions. The amounts were high, billed monthly, for special filters for medicinal water treatment and controlled supplements for geriatric care. Lucy had never heard of these filters, and no one in the house had ever mentioned medicinal water. Trembling, she pulled her old phone from her pocket and quickly photographed the invoices. The image was a bit blurry from her nerves, but you could read the amounts and the company name. She put the phone away and finished cleaning the office as if nothing had happened, but her heart was beating so hard she was sure everyone in the house could hear it. That same afternoon, she gathered her courage and tried to talk to Michael. She waited for him to finish a call on the veranda and approached him as humbly as she could. "Mr. Sterling, excuse me." He turned, already impatient. He was wearing a white linen shirt and dress pants, his graying hair combed back with gel. He smelled of expensive cologne. "Yes, Lucy?" "It's about Mr. Ernest. I've noticed that maybe the water." "The water?" He raised his eyebrows, a condescending smile on his lips. "What about the water?" "I think maybe it's not good for him. When I serve him regular water from the kitchen, he seems better, more awake." "Lucy." His tone changed, became harder, though the smile remained. "You're an excellent employee, but you're not a doctor, are you? My father is receiving specialized treatment from Dr. Bennett, a professional with 30 years of experience. "That water has special supplements recommended for his condition. Please don't meddle in medical affairs, just do your job." It wasn't exactly a threat, but the message was clear. Stay in your place or you'll regret it. Lucy lowered her eyes and apologized, feeling her face burn with humiliation. She walked away with trembling hands and a knot in her stomach. Later, she tried to look at that folder in the office again, but found the door locked. Michael must have realized she'd been snooping where she shouldn't. That night was different from the others. Lucy waited for everyone to leave, then hid in the small ground-floor storage closet, where they kept brooms and cleaning supplies. When she was sure that only she, Gabriel and the nurse Claudia were left in the house, she crept silently up to Mr. Ernest's room. Hidden in a pouch on her uniform belt was a bottle of regular mineral water she had bought with her own money from a corner store near the bus stop. Mr. Ernest was asleep, breathing with difficulty, his mouth open, his skin pale. Lucy swapped the crystal pitcher for the water she had brought, put the original pitcher inside a plastic bag, and hid it all at the back of the cleaning closet in the hallway. Then she just sat there in a chair beside the old man's bed, watching and praying quietly. It was after 3 in the morning when Mr. Ernest finally opened his eyes. He looked at Lucy in confusion for a few seconds, then seemed to recognize her. "You—" His voice came out weak, hoarse. "Always here?" "Yes, Mr. Ernest. I'm here." "Water." Lucy served him the clean water she had brought. He drank slowly, with difficulty, but he drank. And for the first time in days, he didn't immediately fall back into that deep, heavy sleep. He stayed awake, looking at the ceiling, breathing better. The price for that small victory came quickly. The next morning, Mrs. Martin, the head housekeeper, reprimanded Lucy harshly for staying past her shift without authorization. She said it was a violation of house rules, that she was meddling in duties that weren't hers, and that if it happened again she would be fired on the spot. Michael appeared during the scolding and just watched with that same condescending smile, without saying a word. But his eyes said it all. "I'm watching you." Lucy apologized, lowered her head and went back to work. But inside her certainty was growing. Something terribly wrong was happening in that house, and she was the only one who seemed willing to see it. As the days passed, it became increasingly clear what forces truly moved that house of impeccable appearances. Lucy learned to observe not just what people said, but what they hid in their silences, their averted gazes, and the conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. Michael Sterling had built his public image as an exemplary entrepreneur on pillars that seemed solid. Charity campaigns for nursing homes, television interviews about business ethics, photos with his wife Veronica and their 2 teenage children in celebrity magazines. But inside, away from the cameras and the white smiles, the man carried old fears that ate away at him. He was afraid his father's past decisions would come to light. Mr. Ernest, in his moments of lucidity, would mention things Michael preferred to keep buried. Investments in companies that exploited workers, broken promises to partners who later mysteriously disappeared from business circles, accounts in offshore tax havens the IRS had never discovered, and there was something even more urgent, the will. Michael knew that his father, in his last months of relative lucidity before his health began to decline rapidly, had talked about changing the inheritance. He wanted to leave a significant portion of his estate to charities, to loyal former employees, even to the housekeeper who cared for him so kindly. He couldn't allow that. Not after working so hard to build the empire that bore his name. Michael didn't get his own hands dirty. He never had. He hired people to solve delicate problems, creating layers of distance between his orders and the actual actions, in the distorted logic he called business pragmatism. Accelerating the natural decline of a sick old man through aggressive medical treatments wasn't exactly a crime. It was just helping nature take its inevitable course. The more confused and debilitated his father became, the less likely he was to change any important documents. Claudia Morales, the nurse, was the enforcer of this silent operation. She was 42, with 2 teenage daughters and a mother with advanced Alzheimer's living in a rundown house in a rough part of Newark. Her nurse's salary barely covered the basics. When Michael called her for a private conversation and offered to double her monthly pay to follow specialized treatments without asking unnecessary questions, Claudia saw a way out. She convinced herself she was just administering strong vitamins, concentrated supplements that made the patient drowsier but were part of a legitimate medical protocol. She turned a blind eye to the inconsistencies, to the fact that Dr. Bennett never really examined Mr. Ernest, just glanced at his chart and signed prescriptions. She needed that extra money. With it, she could move her mother out of that violent neighborhood, put her daughters in a better school, and breathe without the constant anxiety of not being able to pay the bills at the end of the month. Dr. Richard Bennett was another key piece in this machine. A doctor who graduated from Columbia, a specialist in geriatrics, he had once been respected in academic circles. But years in a luxury private practice had shaped a different attitude in him. He had learned that too many questions drove away wealthy clients. Michael Sterling paid generous fees, always on time, and recommended Dr. Bennett to business friends who also had elderly, inconvenient parents. Bennett preferred not to investigate Mr. Ernest's excessive drowsiness, his rapid weight loss, or the mental confusion that seemed disproportionate for someone who, 6 months earlier, was still playing chess. He signed prescriptions for strong sedatives, justified the symptoms as a natural part of the aging process, and increased dosages without question. After all, 80 was an age to die, wasn't it? And if nature needed a little push to follow its course, who was he to interfere? Especially when each visit to the Sterling mansion earned him a fee equivalent to a week of consultations at his regular office. Lucy didn't know all these details, but she sensed the general structure. She saw how Dr. Bennett barely touched Mr. Ernest during his visits, how Claudia avoided looking the patient in the eye, how Michael never stayed in his father's room for more than 2 minutes. One Friday night, when the house was emptier than usual because Michael and Veronica had gone to a charity dinner, Lucy made a risky decision. She waited for Claudia to leave at 11, confirmed that only Gabriel was in the guard booth, and went up to Mr. Ernest's room with clean water she had filled directly from the kitchen tap, bypassing the crystal pitcher in his room. She carefully changed the water, poured the contents of the suspicious pitcher down the toilet in the guest bathroom, and washed it out with soap. Then she sat beside the old man's bed and waited, just praying in silence. It was after midnight when Mr. Ernest began to stir. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking several times like someone emerging from a very deep dream. He looked at Lucy and for the first time in weeks seemed truly lucid. His voice came out hoarse but firm. "You." It took him a few seconds to gather his strength. "I always see you here, taking care of me." "Yes, Mr. Ernest, I'm here." They want me to go soon." Each word was an effort, but he continued. "My son, the doctor, that woman in white. Don't talk like that. You need to save your energy." "No." His trembling hand gripped Lucy's wrist with surprising strength. "Listen. Listen carefully." He asked her to open the nightstand drawer, where he kept a small, old and worn brown leather case. Inside was a rosary with dark beads, and wrapped in thin paper, a small golden key. This key. Mr. Ernest took a deep breath, fighting the exhaustion that was trying to pull him back to sleep. "It opens a secret drawer. In Michael's office, behind the law books, there are documents, proof." "Proof of what?" "Things he's done, dirty deals, and there's—" He closed his eyes for a moment. "There's a new will I signed. He forced me. Said it was a tax update, but I read it. It leaves everything to him, everything." "Did you have another will?" "Yes, at the bank, with a different lawyer, but Michael said that one wasn't valid anymore, that I had to sign the new one. I was confused. Dizzy, I signed it, but that's not what I wanted." Lucy felt the weight of that revelation. She put the key in her uniform pocket, along with the rosary Mr. Ernest insisted she take. "If something happens to me," he whispered, "you're going to need this. Promise me you'll use it." "Mr. Ernest, you can't talk like that. Promise me." His voice came out louder, almost desperate. "I promise." He relaxed, closed his eyes, and within minutes was asleep again. But it was a different kind of sleep now, more peaceful, without the low moans from before. Lucy went down the mansion stairs with the key burning in her pocket. She passed through the kitchen, where Rosa was still washing dishes from the dinner the employers had served to some friends. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Rosa dried her hands on her apron. "Rosa." Lucy moved closer, lowering her voice. "If I ask you something about your nephew, will you answer honestly?" The cook tensed up. "What nephew?" "The one who works as a delivery driver, for a lab." "Why?" "Because I saw some invoices, from a company that supplies products here, and I think it's connected to the lab that employs your nephew." Rosa bit her lip. She was afraid of getting the boy in trouble, but she couldn't lie to Lucy either. He delivers boxes without invoices, says they're imported supplements. He brings them here sometimes to Dr. Bennett's clinic. I never really knew what was inside. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The next day, a Saturday morning, when Lucy arrived for the extra shift Michael had demanded, she found Veronica waiting in the living room, her face tense with restrained anger. "Lucy, we need to talk." The tone wasn't for a conversation, it was an accusation. "Yes, ma'am?" "A pair of diamond earrings are missing from the guest room. Earrings I left on the dresser last night. Did you clean that room?" "Yes, but I didn't touch any jewelry. I would never—" "I'm not accusing you yet, but you need to understand that things like this don't just disappear, and you were the last person in there." Lucy felt the floor drop out from under her. She knew exactly what was happening. It wasn't about earrings. It was about silencing her, creating a reason to fire her if she kept asking inconvenient questions. The fear of losing her job mixed with an old anger. She remembered her grandfather being mistreated in the nursing home, remembered the previous job where they called her a liar, remembered Mr. Ernest squeezing her hand and asking her to promise to use that key. "I didn't take anything, Mrs. Sterling. I have never taken anything from anyone. My mother raised me to be honest." "Then where are the earrings?" "I don't know, but it wasn't me." Veronica dismissed her with an impatient wave, but the message had been delivered. Be careful. You're being watched. That night, Lucy seriously considered giving up, quitting, going back to Texas with her mother, forgetting this mansion and its rotten secrets. It would be easier, safer. But as she lay in the narrow bed in her small room in the Bronx, she felt the golden key in her pants pocket. She thought of Mr. Ernest asking her to promise. She thought of how many elderly people were being silently mistreated out there, with no one who cared. She got up, lit the candle she kept for emergencies, and there, in the flickering light, she wrote in the blue notebook everything she had discovered so far. Every detail, every suspicion, every conversation. Then she took Mr. Ernest's rosary and prayed until she fell asleep, the key tucked under her pillow, fear and courage battling for space inside her chest. The night it all came to a head was an ordinary Tuesday, when the city below twinkled with millions of lights, and the Sterling mansion seemed both more exposed and, at the same time, more confident than ever. Michael had left for a charity event downtown, one of those expensive dinners where entrepreneurs donated symbolic amounts and took photos for social media. Veronica had gone with him, wearing a long navy blue dress. That cost more than Lucy earned in 6 months. The rest of the house staff had been dismissed early. Only Claudia, until her 11 o'clock shift ended, Gabriel in the security booth, and Lucy, who claimed she was staying late to do a deep clean of the library, remained. For those in charge of the house, it was the perfect time to do what they didn't want anyone to see. The house was quiet, the bosses were out, and the witnesses were reduced to a minimum. But Lucy had her own silent plan, built over days of careful observation and sleepless nights. She had her old phone hidden in the deep pocket of her apron, the voice recorder app ready, tested 3 times to make sure it worked. She had spoken to Gabriel the day before, a brief meeting near the guard booth when she arrived early, pretending she had forgotten something. "If you hear any strange noises tonight," she had said in a low voice, "could you pay special attention to the camera in the hallway by the office and the one in Mr. Ernest's room?" Gabriel had studied her with those serious eyes of a man who had seen a lot in his life. "You're stirring up a hornet's nest, kid." "I know. You could lose your job, or worse. I know that too. He was silent for a moment, then gave a slight nod. He had a daughter. He knew what it was like to protect someone vulnerable. Lucy also had the blue notebook folded at the bottom of her worn-out purse, with all her notes organized by date and time, the moments Mr. Ernest got worse, the days Claudia changed the water, the coincidences that were no longer coincidences. And in the innermost pocket of her uniform, safely tucked away, was the golden key the old man had entrusted to her. Around 8 o'clock, while pretending to organize books on the library shelf, Lucy heard voices coming from the small dining room, the one reserved for private meetings. She felt her heart race. She activated the phone's recorder, placed the device in her pocket so the microphone faced up, and entered the room carrying an empty tray, as if to collect coffee cups. Michael was there. He hadn't left after all. And with him, sitting in one of the upholstered chairs, was Dr. Bennett with his expensive glasses and gelled grey hair. Neither of them looked at Lucy as she entered. To them, housekeepers were part of the furniture, invisible and mute. "This situation is dragging on longer than expected," Michael was saying, drumming his fingers on the mahogany table. "I need you to adjust the dosage just a little more to avoid any unnecessary surprises." Dr. Bennett cleaned his glasses with a cloth handkerchief. "Michael, I've already increased it twice. If I keep this up, it's going to be too obvious. No one will question it. He's 80 years old. It's natural for his system not to respond well. And what if the family wants a second opinion?" "What family?" Michael laughed humorlessly. "My sister lives in Spain and barely calls once a month. My kids are 15 and 17. They don't care about a sick grandfather. There's no one to question anything but you." Lucy pretended to arrange things on the tray, her hands trembling slightly. The phone in her pocket was recording everything, every word, every complicit silence. "And that housekeeper?" Dr. Bennett's voice held a note of concern. "I heard she's been asking questions." "I'm already taking care of that. Veronica planted a story about some missing jewelry. Anything she tries to say will discredit her. A thieving housekeeper versus a respected businessman. It won't even go to court." Lucy left the room with her legs feeling like jelly, but with the recording saved. She went straight to the staff bathroom, locked herself in, and leaned her forehead against the cold, tiled wall. She took several deep breaths, trying to control the shaking in her hands. Now she had proof. Their own words, no longer just her suspicions. Later, when the clock struck 10:30, Lucy saw through a crack in the kitchen. Just as Claudia went upstairs carrying the crystal pitcher. It wasn't time to change the water yet. Mr. Ernest always had a drink at 11 before bed. Why was Claudia going up so early? Lucy waited 2 minutes and then followed, barefoot so as not to make a sound on the marble steps. She saw the nurse enter not Mr. Ernest's room, but the guest bathroom in the hallway. The same door that was always in a camera-blind spot, just as Gabriel had warned. She approached slowly, her heart beating so loudly it seemed impossible that no one could hear it. The door was ajar by just a couple of inches. Through the gap, she could see Claudia's back as she fiddled with something over the marble sink. In her hand was a small, unlabeled vial of clear liquid. She poured drops into the water pitcher. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then she put the vial back in her uniform pocket, picked up the pitcher, and left. Lucy quickly hid behind a heavy curtain. She waited for Claudia to pass and enter Mr. Ernest's room. Then she acted fast, driven by a courage she didn't know she had. She slipped into the guest bathroom. There were water splashes on the sink. She opened the small stainless steel trash can, and there it was, an empty vial, discarded, with a partially torn label. She picked it up carefully, wrapped it in toilet paper, and put it in the pouch on her uniform. In the mirror's reflection, she saw her own pale face, her eyes wide with fear, but also with determination. She ran to the downstairs pantry, grabbed a plain glass pitcher identical to the crystal one from a high shelf, and filled it with filtered water straight from the kitchen tap. She went back up, silent as a cat, and entered Mr. Ernest's room. The old man was asleep, breathing with difficulty. On the nightstand, the crystal pitcher with the contaminated water was waiting. Lucy swapped the pitchers in a swift movement, putting the crystal one inside a plastic bag she always carried, folded in her pocket for trash. The pitcher was still half full. It was proof, physical evidence of what they were doing. When she turned to leave, she almost ran into Veronica standing in the doorway. "What are you doing in here?" Her employer's voice was as cold as ice. I was just checking if Mr. Ernest needed anything. At this hour, without anyone calling for you. I heard a noise and... Liar. Veronica took a step into the room. "You're snooping, looking at things you shouldn't be." Lucy tried to get past, but Veronica blocked her way. She grabbed Lucy's arm tightly, her long, red-polished nails digging into her skin. "You're going to give me that bag right now." "There's nothing in the bag, ma'am." "Then you won't mind showing me." It was a silent tug-of-war there in the dimly lit hallway. Veronica pulled at the bag. Lucy held on tight, her heart racing. In the room, Mr. Ernest moaned softly in his sleep. Downstairs, the sound of Gabriel's footsteps on his nightly rounds. Veronica yanked hard and managed to rip the purse from her shoulder, but Lucy had the plastic bag with the pitcher hidden under her apron. In a desperate move, she gave Veronica a light push, just enough to create some space, and ran down the hall. "Gabriel, help! This housekeeper is stealing!" Lucy flew down the stairs, nearly tripping on the last step. Veronica was right behind her, screaming. Gabriel appeared in the entrance hall, confused, not knowing what to do. "She's stealing things from Mr. Ernest's room," Veronica panted with rage. "I didn't steal anything." Lucy showed her empty hands, but kept the plastic bag hidden behind her back. Gabriel looked from one to the other. He saw the real desperation in Lucy's eyes and the theatrical anger in Veronica's. "I'll search her," he said in a neutral voice. He took Lucy by the arm, not brutally but firmly. "Come with me." He led her to the small pantry at the back of the kitchen, away from Veronica's eyes. He closed the door. "What did you do, kid?" he whispered. "I got the water they're using to poison the old man. It's here." She showed him the bag. "And I have a recording of them confessing. On my phone." Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment, like someone who knows they're about to make a life-changing decision. "Veronica's going to want to hold you here until the police arrive. She'll make up a story that you stole something expensive." "I know. You need to get out. Now." "But Mr. Ernest..." "I'll watch over him tonight, I promise. But you leave right now through the back door. Take this evidence and go somewhere safe." Lucy clutched the bag to her chest. Through the small pantry window, she could see Veronica on the phone, probably calling Michael. "Gabriel, you're going to get in trouble for helping me." "I'm already in trouble. I saw what I recorded on the cameras yesterday. I've written down the strange times. This whole thing..." He gestured to encompass the entire house. "This isn't right. It never has been." Lucy slipped out the back door, the one that led to the sunroom and then to the side wall. Gabriel left the service gate open. She ran down the poorly lit Upper East Side sidewalk, walked down to the main avenue, and caught the first bus that came by. Inside the plastic bag, the crystal pitcher with the contaminated water sloshed around. In her pocket, the phone with the recording. In her other pocket, the empty vial Claudia had thrown away. And in her chest, an immense fear mixed with a strange sense of relief. She had evidence now. She had proof. But she had also lost everything. She knew she could never go back to that house. She knew Michael would use all his power to destroy her. As the bus passed in front of the small chapel in Mott Haven, Lucy made the sign of the cross. She didn't know exactly what to do next, but she knew she had come too far to give up now. Dawn broke cold over the Bronx, and Lucy had been awake since she got home at 2 in the morning. Sitting on the narrow bed she shared with her cousin Sophia, she stared at the plastic bag on the floor as if it were a bomb about to explode. The crystal, pitcher inside, the empty vial, the phone with the recording. It was all evidence, but it was also a risk. Michael Sterling was not a man to take a challenge lying down. Sophia, who worked as a cashier at a supermarket, noticed her cousin's tension as soon as she woke up. "Lucy, what happened? You didn't sleep at all." It was hard to explain. The words came out in a jumble. tangled by exhaustion and fear. Sophia listened in silence, her eyes growing wider and wider, and when Lucy finished, she just said, "You know this man could ruin us, right? People like us don't win against people like him. I know, but I can't let that old man die like this. I just can't." Lucy waited for the morning to brighten a little more before she left. She needed guidance, someone who understood these things. She couldn't go to the police yet. She knew how it worked, a housekeeper accusing a rich businessman with no lawyer, no connections. They would laugh at her. Or worse, they would tip off Michael before even investigating. She remembered Mr. Miller, the owner of the small pharmacy on the corner of the main square in Mott Haven. He was a kind man in his 60s who always gave correct change and advice on home remedies. He had worked for years as a lab technician before opening the pharmacy. Maybe he could help. The pharmacy smelled of alcohol and medicine when Lucy walked in. Mr. Miller was organizing boxes of medication on a shelf, his thick glasses slipping down his nose. "Lucy, what brings you here so early?" She got straight to the point, keeping her voice low even though there was no one else in the store. She showed him the empty vial, told him about the drops in the water, about Mr. Ernest getting worse whenever he drank from that specific pitcher. Mr. Miller took the vial carefully, held it up to the window light, and examined the residue at the bottom. His face grew serious. "This here," he sniffed it, wrinkling his nose. "This isn't a vitamin, Lucy. It has a chemical smell. Any decent doctor who analyzes this will know it shouldn't be in a pitcher of drinking water." "What do I do?" "You need to get this properly analyzed by a lab, but that costs money." "I don't have any." Mr. Miller thought for a moment. Then he pulled a yellowed business card from a drawer. "Go to the community health clinic. Look for Dr. Evan Parker. He's still young, graduated about 5 years ago, but he's a good guy. He works there by choice. He could be at a private hospital making 10 times as much. Show this to him. If he thinks you have a case, he'll help." Lucy clutched the card in her fingers. Another chance. Another risk. The Mott Haven Community Health Clinic was in an old building with peeling walls packed with people who had been waiting for care since early morning, crying children, tired mothers, coughing old men. Lucy waited 4 hours before she could speak with Dr. Parker. He was indeed young, probably not even 30, thin, with dark circles under his eyes from working too much and sleeping too little. He wore a stained white coat and had a stethoscope around his neck. When Lucy entered the tiny room that served as his office, he was eating a quick sandwich between patients. "I'm sorry," he said, putting the sandwich away. "Didn't have time for lunch. What can I do for you?" Lucy told him everything, every detail. She showed him the still bruised arm where Veronica had grabbed her, showed him the empty vial, told him about the notes in her notebook, about the recording on her phone. Dr. Parker listened without interrupting, and the more she spoke, the more serious he became. "Are you telling me that a businessman is deliberately poisoning his own father? I know how it sounds. I know I'm just a housekeeper and—" "No." He held up a hand, cutting her off. "It's not about who you are. It's about what you're reporting. This is serious. If it's true, it's attempted murder." "It is true. I swear to God it is." Dr. Parker took the vial, examined it, sniffed it. He asked to see the notebook. He read it page by page, checking dates, times, and the described symptoms. Then he asked to hear the recording. Lucy played it on her old phone with trembling hands. Michael's voice came through, low but clear. "I need you to adjust the dosage, just a little more, to avoid any unnecessary surprises." When the recording finished, the doctor was silent for a long moment. "I need to get this water and this vial analyzed. I have a friend who works at a private lab. He owes me a favor. It'll take a few days, but we'll know exactly what's in here." "And then?" "Then we'll see." "But you need to understand something, Lucy. What you're doing is dangerous. People with money have lawyers, they have influence, they will try to destroy you." "I know. They're already trying. They accused me of stealing jewelry." "Can you prove you didn't?" "Only my word. But I've never stolen anything in my life." Dr. Parker sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "I'm going to give you a document, a preliminary report stating there's a suspicion of chronic poisoning in an elderly patient. It's not definitive proof, but it's something official. Keep it with your other evidence, and be careful, very careful. The next few days were a nightmare of anxiety. Lucy didn't go back to the Sterling mansion, of course. She was fired via a text message from Mrs. Martin. Your services are no longer required. Please collect your belongings from the front gate tomorrow at 8 a.m. They didn't even pay her for her last week of work. Michael sent a lawyer to her small room in the Bronx, a man in an expensive grey suit with a leather briefcase and a predatory smile. He offered her $5,000 in exchange for signing a document stating that she had made everything up, that she was emotionally unstable, and that she apologized for the defamation. It's a generous offer for someone in your position, the lawyer said, placing the envelope of cash on the old kitchen table. You can either accept it, or my client will sue you for slander and defamation. He'll seek damages, $50,000. Do you have that kind of money? Lucy looked at the envelope. It was more money than she earned in 3 months. She could pay off her overdue bills, help her mother in Texas, breathe a little. But she also looked at Mr. Ernest's rosary on the nightstand, and she remembered the promise she had made. You can take your money back, I'm not going to lie. The lawyer's smile vanished. You'll regret this. My client has unlimited resources. You have nothing. You will lose. When the man left, Lucy was shaking all over. Sophia hugged her, but she was scared too. Cousin, are you sure? That money would have helped so much? I know, but I can't sell my conscience. Help began to appear from unexpected places. Rosa, the cook, showed up one afternoon with a bag of food. She hugged Lucy tight and cried. I heard what you did. Gabriel told me. You're so brave, kid. Rosa, your nephew, the one who works at the lab. I already talked to him. He's scared, but he's willing to talk. He recognized the company name on the vial. It's the same one that supplies the unmarked boxes to Dr. Bennett's clinic. He'll testify if he has to. Every small step forward came at a high price. Lucy lost her job, had to go back to sharing the tiny room in the Bronx, and faced the suspicious stares of neighbors who had heard rumors that she was suing an important man. Many thought she was being greedy, trying to get money from rich people. Gabriel paid a steep price too. He was fired from the Sterling mansion for a breach of security protocol. They claimed he had left doors unlocked and facilitated the theft Lucy had supposedly committed. Without a job, without health insurance, he saw his daughter's asthma treatment at risk. But even so, when Lucy called asking for help, he said, I have the camera logs I managed to save before they fired me. They show Claudia going to the guest bathroom multiple times at odd hours. It's not much, but it's something. A social worker from the Mott Haven parish, Sister Teresa, a middle-aged nun who ran programs for the needy elderly, heard the story through Rosa. She sought out Lucy one Sunday after Mass. My child, what you are doing is the right thing, but you need professional help. I know a prosecutor at the district attorney's office who investigates crimes against the elderly. I can set up a meeting. It was through this fragile thread of solidarity among the poor that the evidence began to reach the ears of someone with the power to investigate. Assistant District Attorney Lucas Davis was a man in his early 40s with thinning hair who worked in a cramped office with stacks of files reaching the ceiling. He listened to Lucy attentively, reviewed every document and played the recording 3 times. He read Dr. Parker's preliminary report. He examined the camera, logs Gabriel had provided. He spoke with Rosa's nephew about the irregular deliveries. This isn't an easy case, he said finally. Michael Sterling has excellent lawyers, but you have more than I expected. You have a pattern. You have witnesses. You have physical evidence. I'm opening a formal investigation. When Lucy left that office, it was already dark. She walked to the chapel in Mott Haven, went inside, and lit a candle. She knelt on the hard wooden pew, and for the first time in weeks she cried. Not from despair, but from exhausted relief. Someone was listening. Someone believed. Her? Outside, the city remained noisy and indifferent, but inside, in the silence filled with flickering candles, Lucy felt a small sense of peace. She hadn't won yet. Maybe she never would completely. But she had done what she could. She had held Mr. Ernest's rosary and kept her promise. Enough months passed for things to find their places, though not in the perfect way you see in movies or on TV. Justice, when it finally moved, was slow and full of obstacles, but it moved. The lab analysis confirmed what Lucy had always known in her heart. The water by Mr. Ernest's bed contained sedatives in concentrations far above the permitted levels, mixed with compounds that enhanced the effects of medications the old man was already taking. The technical report used complicated words Lucy could barely pronounce, but the conclusion was clear. This was not medical treatment. It was slow, deliberate poisoning. Dr. Parker submitted a detailed opinion based on the notes in Lucy's notebook, comparing Mr. Ernest's condition on the days he drank the contaminated water versus the days he drank plain water. The pattern was undeniable. Gabriel provided the saved security camera logs, showing Claudia repeatedly entering the guest bathroom at odd hours. Rosa's nephew, after much hesitation and fear, formally confessed to making off-the-books deliveries from the lab to Dr. Bennett's clinic, always with instructions not to ask about the contents. The recording on Lucy's old phone with the voices of Michael and Dr. Bennett discussing the dosage adjustment was authenticated by experts. All these elements, fragile on their own, together formed a web that was hard to ignore. Michael Sterling did not go to prison. Men like him rarely do. His expensive lawyers negotiated a deal with the DA's office. He lost administrative control of the company that bore his name, was forced to pay a heavy fine and had to fund a 5-year program for the care and protection of vulnerable seniors, supervised by authorities and non-profits. He would have to do community service and would remain under judicial supervision. It wasn't the punishment many felt he deserved, but it was a clear measure of consequence. Dr. Bennett's medical license was suspended by the State Medical Board for 8 years. He lost the right to practice during that period. His name was put on a list of investigated professionals, and many of his wealthy, former patients simply vanished. His reputation, which had taken decades to build, crumbled in weeks. Claudia Morales, the nurse, permanently lost her professional license. She could no longer work in healthcare. During the proceedings, she cried a great deal, saying she was only following orders, that she needed the money for her sick mother. The judge was harsh. Necessity does not justify poisoning a defenseless elderly man. You had a choice. You chose wrong. Claudia left the courtroom with her head down, carrying the weight of having betrayed the profession she had once chosen as her calling. Mr. Ernest was removed from the Upper East Side mansion by court order and transferred to a simple but dignified nursing home run by nuns in a small town outside New York City. A place with a modest garden, clean rooms with natural light, and nurses who genuinely cared. It was far from the luxury of the mansion, but also far from the danger. It took weeks for his system to minimally recover from the accumulated effects of the poisoning. He never went back to being the man he once was, but he regained weight. His skin returned to a healthy color, and his eyes, though tired, regained a long-lost sparkle. He accepted the wheelchair without complaint, discovering pleasure in being pushed into the garden to feel the morning sun on his face. The nuns treated him with genuine affection, and for the first time in years he seemed at peace. One spring afternoon, 6 months after it all began, he asked for a pen and paper. With a trembling but determined hand, he wrote a letter to Lucy. Dear Lucy, I don't have enough words to thank you for what you did. You paid attention to the detail everyone else dismissed. You believed an old man still deserved to live with dignity. Because of your courage, I am here, breathing clean air, seeing trees out my window, being treated like a human being. I can't give you riches because my son has blocked everything. But I give you my blessing and my eternal gratitude. You saved me. May God always protect you. Ernest. Lucy received the letter from Sister Teresa and cried so much that Sophia got worried. But they were good tears. Tears of relief, of a mission accomplished. Lucy's life changed, but not in the way people imagine. She didn't get rich, win awards, or appear on television. Michael tried to sue her for defamation even after the settlement, but the case was dismissed. The accusation of jewelry theft also died when Veronica couldn't produce any evidence and the earrings magically reappeared in a drawer. Lucy started working for a small community service that cared for the elderly in Mott Haven, run by the parish and funded by donations. The salary was less than what she earned at the Sterling mansion, but it was honest work and it was hers. She coordinated home visits, checked if the seniors were taking the right medication, if anyone was being disrespected, if their families were taking good care of them. She taught other working women to trust what they saw, not to let themselves be easily silenced, to write down details, to ask questions. She now lived in a small apartment she shared with Sophia and another cousin who had arrived from Texas looking for work. It wasn't much, but it was a roof over her head paid for with her own hard work. The apartment was in an old 3-story building with thin walls and noisy neighbors, but it had a small window that looked out onto the square where the chapel was. Early in the morning, Lucy would wake to the sound of the bells calling for the first Mass. She still stopped by Mr. Miller's pharmacy, and he always had a proud smile for her. "This is the girl who wasn't afraid to stand up to the powerful," he would tell his customers. Rosa would visit her on Sundays, bringing home-cooked food, a pot of rice and beans or a stew, and the two would talk about everything and nothing. Rosa's nephew had found an honest job in a warehouse, far from suspicious deliveries, trying to rebuild his life. Gabriel would bring his daughter to visit Lucy from time to time. The 12-year-old girl's asthma was better, thanks to a subsidized treatment Sister Teresa had arranged through a social program. Gabriel had found a job as a security guard at a mall. He didn't earn as much as before, but he slept peacefully knowing he had done the right thing. The old phone that had recorded Michael's confession finally broke for good. Lucy bought another one, simple but more durable, and kept the habit of using the recorder to log instructions and messages from the seniors she visited. She felt it gave a voice to those many preferred not to hear. The blue notebook was joined by other notebooks. Now, instead of records of fear and suspicion, they held stories of small, daily acts of care. Mrs. Maria, who lived alone and needed company in the afternoons. Mr. John, who forgot to take his heart medication. Mrs. Carmen, who was suffering at the hands of a grandson who took her Social Security check. Lucy had learned that elder abuse happened everywhere, not just in the mansions of the rich. And she had also learned that one attentive person could make a difference. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Sister Teresa got permission to take Lucy to the nursing home where Mr. Ernest was living. The bus ride took almost 2 hours, passing through neighborhoods Lucy had never seen, until they reached the quiet town surrounded by hills. The nursing home was simple, painted white and yellow, with a garden where roses and jasmine grew. Mr. Ernest was sitting in a wheelchair under a tree, covered with a light blanket, looking at the horizon. When he saw Lucy approaching, his eyes filled with tears. "You came," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Of course I came, Mr. Ernest." Lucy knelt beside the wheelchair, so they were at the same height. He held her hand with a strength surprising for someone so frail. "I'm alive because of you. Because of you, I can see this garden, feel the sun. You gave me the greatest gift, more time. You would have done the same for me. I don't know if I would have had the courage. You lost so much because of me. I gained more than I lost, Mr. Ernest. I gained peace of mind. I gained the certainty that I did the right thing." They sat there talking slowly, without rushing. Mr. Ernest told her about the nuns who cared for him, about the simple but tasty food, about a little yellow bird that came every day to peck crumbs from his windowsill. Lucy told him about her new job, about the elderly folks in Mott Haven she was now helping. Before she left, Lucy got a glass of clean water that one of the nuns had brought. Clear, pure water, with nothing hidden in it. She gave it to Mr. Ernest to drink. He drank slowly, savoring each sip like someone who knows the value of simple things. "You know what I've learned?" he said, handing back the empty glass. "That God speaks through people like you, humble people who dare to care when everyone else looks the other way." Lucy felt tears wet her face. She tucked those words away in her heart, along with all the other precious things she had been collecting. Rosa's gratitude, Gabriel's respect, Mr. Miller's proud smile, Sister Teresa's blessing. On the way back to the Bronx, as the bus swayed along the bumpy roads, Lucy looked out the window at the immense city that stretched as far as the eye could see. Millions of people, millions of stories, millions of injustices hidden behind closed doors. She couldn't save everyone. She couldn't change the whole world. But she could do what was within her reach. She could pay attention. She could believe her own eyes. She could refuse to stay quiet when she saw something wrong. She could care. That night at home, before going to sleep, Lucy opened her new notebook and wrote in her careful hand, "Today I visited Mr. Ernest. He is well. He is alive. And I understood that sometimes God doesn't send spectacular miracles. He sends courage to ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Thank you, Lord, for using me, for giving me eyes to see and the courage to act. Amen." She closed the notebook, turned off the light, and slept peacefully. Outside, the city remained noisy, unequal, full of problems that seemed too big to solve. But inside, in that simple little room, there was peace. The peace of someone who knows she did the best she could, and that in the end was enough.